Think that quarterback will throw for more than 300 yards? How about that receiver in Miami grabbing a touchdown? Check out DraftKings Pick6, the newest way to compete against others and play fantasy football to win cash with DraftKings. Pick a player and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat like yards, touchdowns, catches, and more. Get your picks right, and you'll win cash. Download the new DraftKings Pick6 app now and use code BALLERS. That's code BALLERS for new customers to play $5 and get $50 in Pick6 credits guaranteed, plus 1 month of NFL Plus Premium on us. Offer expires 9/19, only on DraftKings Pick6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. One per new customer. Reward issued as $50 in non-withdrawable Pick6 credits that expire in 6 months. NFL Plus Premium offer available only to new and former NFL Plus subscribers. Additional NFL Plus Premium terms at NFL.com/terms.
Introducing the new Versed Limitless Pant Collection. Reimagined to deliver effortless style, mobility, and comfort, the new Limitless Collection features moisture-wicking, 4-way stretch fabric that's wrinkle-resistant and doesn't lose fit. Plus, the updated design offers a functional and classic look with unmatched versatility. The new Versed Limitless Pant Collection. Pants made for movement. Available only at Dick's Sporting Goods. Shop now at dicks.com/limitless.
The DFS Studio is brought to you by DraftKings. Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast with your hosts, Kyle Borganoni and Matthew Betz.
Welcome back. It's Friday, September 20th, here on the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganoni, and I am joined, as always, by Matthew. I feel like we're on the same page, Betz.
It's a Dortch week, so obviously we're on the same page here. Yeah, I feel much better today than I did on Tuesday when we recorded fresh off the Eagles debacle, so I have a little bit of a more clear mind. I've calmed down. I'm past the anger stage of grieving there. So I'm ready to go, man. This should be a really fun slate. I think there's some really good game environments, a lot of fun plays, a lot of ways that you can play this slate that I think are really interesting angles. So we'll talk about all that today.
You sound wiser, older than you did earlier in the week. Yeah, I feel like the adage you always give is that things aren't as bad as they seem or as good as they seem. It's somewhere in the middle. But the Eagles still, like when we preview their game, I'm like, oh gosh, there's only 3 dudes. There's literally 3 guys on the team we can talk about, and they have Jahan Dotson just running cardio. So I like wanted to get cute in that game. I was like, I have no idea. This team is bland.
What's so funny about NFL Twitter and fandom Twitter is like the Eagles fans out there after that game, like, what is the point of trading for Jahan Dotson? Like, Howie gave up, this and that to go get Jahan Dotson. Like, everyone was like, oh, look at Howie doing it again. And then Jahan Dotson's just literally out there running around doing absolutely nothing, which he's done for the better part of 2 years now. So that means, you know what that means, Kyle? He's going to win somebody the Millie this week, isn't he?
It's either him or the Dortch. I've already considered. And I've already said, if I do win the Millie, I will buy you a Greg Dortch jersey.
Okay, let's go, Kyle.
Yeah, because, it's not a guarantee that he's on this roster next year or the year after. It's just, Betz and I have a little side wager about him being in the league like 2 years from now.
2 years, yeah.
Okay. Well,
which is a lot.
We can see where that goes. And yeah, on this episode, we will give our cash picks, the games we want to stack, which, spoiler alert, I put in the drop this time. Stack Attack is back.
So back.
Our slate breakers, and then do not, and I repeat, do not let the kids get hot. Because right now, Borg Betz is a segment that you want to listen to because I'm 4-0, you're 3-1. We can't stop, won't stop. I did look, you took some different lines than myself. Like, we kind of reversed course here, but maybe that's a good thing. So we'll get to those picks in just a second. If you want to get all of the picks, our player props, you want to get our DraftKings, FanDuel, everything else in there, you can get them at dfspass.com. And I try to highlight this. I try to make a point of saying there's one thing for us to talk on a podcast on a Tuesday, and then this comes out on a Friday. And then by the time Saturday or Sunday rolls around, like there is information, there's projection, there's all these things that we're trying to hone in on. Right now, I'm looking at roster percentage projections, and the player I have chosen as my slate breaker is way lower than I would have imagined. I already like the player a lot, but then when I got there, I was like, wow, like across the industry, this looks a little bit lower than I would have imagined. And yet I also think that could change. And so I want to highlight our best plays article. It's the best thing we do. Like, bar none. I'm not trying to like say anything else. Like, if I only were to give you one piece of information for the entire week, it would be that best plays article, which is in the DFS Pass, comes out on Saturday. You might on a Saturday read that and go, hey, you said that when you were recording the podcast, now you seem a little different. It's like we're trying to change with new information. So any just pro tips, Betz, from getting to write that article every week, and whoever we put in there, we're saying we're going to play these guys.
Yeah, the best plays article I think is a great way to, if you've kind of been like, if you have a life throughout the week and you can't listen to every show, read every article, best plays is for you. It's a quick synopsis of like the games that we want to stack, our top salary adjusted plays on the slate. Kyle ranks his, I rank mine for quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and defense. We give a couple of bold predictions, a couple of guys that were lower on the market that we might fade. So it kind of just gives you a good synopsis of the slate. I think when you get to Saturday, when you do have 90% of the information, that article combined with Matt Hakim's tournament takes article on Saturdays comes out as well. I think it's just a good way to like set the stage if you've prepped all week for the slate, kind of where we come to as a conclusion entering game day on Sunday. So things changed throughout the week. There were guys that on Tuesday I was kind of interested in and doing more research throughout the week. Now I'm like, maybe not. And so we get more new information. Injuries happen on a Friday, that kind of thing. So just make sure you're plugged in all week.
Yeah, the games that we highlight in our Stack Attack section in this podcast is us just kind of working through like, how could this game work out? What's the game flow? What roster percentages are you seeing? And then on Saturday, I'm able to lock in. So last week, it was, man, I am playing a ton of Justin Jefferson and Brock Purdy stacks. Jefferson got there. Purdy's didn't get there, but he also didn't hurt me because of some of the other plays that people were playing. It also, I wrote up in there, I said, hey, Betz and I talked a lot about Rams. And last week, if you were overweight Rams, then you probably missed out. I made the decision in tournaments to say I'm going to be super underweight Rams and just assume that game fails. I'm still going to play Cooper Kupp. I still played a ton of Kyron in tournaments, but I didn't play those guys together thinking they would go off. And that's just kind of the theory part of we can like players, but also let's say they don't go off. How do I then change my strategy? So you can get that at dfspass.com. Use the promo code DFSPod. And the best part about the way that we play is it can pay for itself in just a week. So make sure you jump in on that. Let's go to our cash picks.
Straight cash, homie.
I think we've done, 200 cash sections together, my friend. Like, we've done this segment a lot over the years. And I feel like at this point, I kind of get in the groove, get my reps in. And when we're talking about on the show, I'm always like, yeah, this feels right. This feels good. Here's the full players. So I don't know. I feel like the cash process at this point, it's like, we're not at the 10,000 hours Malcolm Gladwell's point, but
correct. We're getting close.
We're definitely putting in a lot of time. Some people might be like, well, you wasted your part of your time doing that, but I feel good about our plays. So at quarterback, talk to me about the plays you like as of this recording.
Yeah, before we jump into the actual plays, I think it's important to kind of highlight how the slate is setting up from a pricing perspective. Like most weeks, like we had this, 2 weeks ago and last week, you had Andre Yoshivas, or some people played Alan Lazard in cash as like a punt play. I see 0 plays currently at wide receiver that I am excited about below 4,500. So I think the way cash game builds are going to look this week, and we're still waiting on Houston running back situation, but Cam Akers might open up a free square, quote unquote, if you want a really cheap running back play. But for the most part, there's a lot of strength in like the middle range of wide receivers. So I think it's more of a balanced build this week than a true start and scrubs. With that in mind, it's tough to get up to the super expensive plays on the slate. So just kind of setting the stage, that's how I feel. I don't know where you're at, Kyle, but that's where I feel. And so when I look at quarterback, Jalen Hurts at 7,300 looks awesome. The tricky part is if you play him, it's really tough to fit some of these, 6K wide receivers plus Kittle plus whoever else you want. But just talking about Hurts in and of himself, of course, he's going on the road to New Orleans. The game environment looks awesome. It's the second highest total on the slate. We just saw him have one of his better rushing performances that we've had in a very long time from Jalen Hurts. Quietly has 26 rush attempts this season. I was surprised when I saw that, but coming off a game where he ran a lot, the tush pushes back, it looks successful. I wish he had AJ Brown. It looks like he's going to miss this game. That's a knock. But I think when you look at where we were paying for him just a year ago or 2 years ago, it was routinely at 8K, and we were trying to figure that out. So at 7,300, you are getting a discount. That said, I probably want to spend down a little bit further if possible this week, just because I love the running back plays that are a little more expensive, and I love the 6K wide receiver plays, and you can't fit them all.
What's interesting about Hurts is before the season, we kind of talked about how Hurts and Barkley are going to kind of cannibalize each other. And right now, Barkley's the running back 2. Hurts is the quarterback 3. It's working out okay. It has been a ping pong effect, though. When we talk about that game and preview it, it's like, I won't be playing those two together, but I can see scenarios where I really like both of them. So that's more of a game theory perspective, but it's Hurts, Kyler. I like Brock Purdy on the road. It feels like a really good spot, but we're playing a lot of 49ers this week. That might be this week's theme is how many 49ers can you play in cash? And then Geno Smith, I just took a deeper dive into the Ryan Grubb offense, and their matchups the first 2 weeks were kind of tough. It was Denver and the Patriots, and they came out throwing. They were effective. He has the 4th most completions in the NFL. So I don't know. I'm a little worried that they could just go into cruise control in that game, but I think Geno at his price point feels solid. I won't say great.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's one slam dunk quarterback play for cash games, but I think Geno should be in your pool if you want to spend down at quarterback to spend up a little bit elsewhere. I think it's totally in play. He's super cheap. They're at home taking on the Dolphins. Dolphins, the raw stats they've given up haven't been that crazy, but they are 29th in EPA per pass attempt defensively and 23rd in success rate allowed. So they've struggled from an efficiency standpoint. And on top of that, Geno's been balling, man. I mean, to start the year, 7th in EPA per play, 4th in success rate, 6th in completion rate over expectation. And Seattle is one of just a handful of teams that have a positive pass rate over expectation to open the year. The offenses in general are going super run heavy. Ryan Grubb is installing a pass-first scheme here. Jackson Smith and Jigba's playing well. DK Metcalf's a little banged up to start the week. It sounds like he'll play, though. He's still got Lockett. He's got all the weapons that I think it's a pretty good spot for Geno if you did want to spend down. Of course, with any pocket passer, the concern is the floor is a little bit lower, but that's baked into the price here at 5,600 again at home, taking on the Dolphins. So Geno is in my player pool.
Yeah, I think Kyler just is the easiest click for me because they're at home. It's the game environment. You saw what he did last week. He's the easiest one if I'm just making my lineups. I like Dak, but I'm maybe more for tournaments right now. And then I got to give you some gross names because I'm seeing them pop up as, well, I get it. It makes sense. Deshaun Watson at home against the Giants.
Nope.
Okay, not interested at all. Justin Fields, 5,400.
That game environment, have you seen the total, by the way?
It was at 36 last time I saw.
That's what I saw too. 36 total between an Arthur Smith team and Harbaugh. I mean, the rush attempts in that game are going to be unreal. So I can't go there personally, but I totally get the math probably says he's a good play just because he's been running enough. But man, that game environment is disgusting.
Yeah, the title I gave it in our main show was The Test of Testosterone between Greg Roman and Arthur Smith. Who can run the ball more?
Just a bunch of guys being dudes.
You know that one of those teams is going to be 3-0, by the way.
I hope they end in a tie. But yes, that's crazy, man.
Speaking of running the ball, I'm just going to say I think Jordan Mason just should be in your lineup. He's still not expensive enough. It's a great matchup against the Rams. His workload's insane. And points per dollar, he's going to be the best. I shared this with our Discord channel, which I'm not going to talk about it too much on the podcast, but I showed some people how to do weighted opportunities. And if you look at his price point at 6,200, it's over the moon that somebody at this price point that's favored by this much with their team implied total, which we talked about on Tuesday, is going to see all this. So Jordan Mason, man, I can't imagine building a lineup in cash without him.
Yeah, I think he's the first guy you put in at running back. Just the workload's insane. He's third in the NFL, tied for third with Josh Jacobs for total touches through 2 games. Jordan Mason, that guy, third in touches in the NFL. So you take the workload, you take the matchup, you take the team total. They're favored by a touchdown. It just makes too much sense. And a small thing that goes in his favor again this week, you think about who's been taking a handful of carries here and there. It's been Debo, and Debo's not going to play. So yeah, Jordan Mason should definitely be in a cash game lineup.
It'll be interesting to see the distribution of Jordan Mason best ball shares. And just, it's normally like we want that late season hammer where like you drafted him as leverage on CMC, or maybe you drafted him as the insurance. But like, let's say CMC actually does come back, which feels like a dream right now, like just a phantom feeling. But then it's like Mason was really good for those teams at the beginning. Did they fade? I don't know. I've been thinking through best balls, like where does he fit in? Because right now if you took him late in your draft, you feel incredible that you got an RB1 that late. So Jordan Mason locked in. The 2 highest priced running backs this week are Saquon and Kamara, and they're in the same game. So how do you feel like the field will handle that?
Yeah, I think Kamara will be more heavily rostered. You just look at how excited everybody is about the Saints, which is, I can't even wrap my head around the fact that we're saying that 2 weeks in, but Clint Kubiak for president. They've just been playing so well. They've been so efficient, and right now the offense is literally 3 players. And when you have an efficient offense and a condensed touch tree to Kamara, Olave, Shaheed, and that's pretty much it, good things tend to happen for fantasy. You add that into the matchup. We talked about on the Tuesday pod just how historically bad this run defense has been for Philly, allowing 6.5 yards per carry. They've just been a train wreck. So he's at home. It's a good game environment. I think to me, Kamara would get the slight nod over Barkley. But I mean, Barkley is a good play in tournaments. I just think for cash games, I would lean Kamara at home.
Yeah, Kamara just feels like a safe play. I love Olave this week. So what do you think about playing those two in the same cash lineup?
Yeah, I think it's fine. Like I said, just with how the touches are just so condensed to their 3 main pieces. They don't really have like a wide receiver 3. The tight ends don't mix in too much. I mean, Taysom, of course, here and there, but it's pretty much those 3. And I just think the matchup is so good that I think it's fine to go with those 2 guys.
I can see a 3 running back build this week. I said that last week, but I can see it with Kamara being the high price guy, Mason being locked in. And then there's some other options that all feel like they fit. Like Devon Achan's going to project super well because he's seen 7 receptions each game, and that's only $7K. So he makes sense. I think most people just going off of pure emotions are like, I'm terrified to play this guy in cash. Like he just, his archetype is a player that's like, I want to go for the moon, but he's been super consistent. Tony Pollard at 6K is still going to project really well. He's the only running back in the first 2 weeks to see 15 plus carries and 4 targets, the only one in the entire NFL in both weeks. So if Spears is out, is Pollard on your radar? 6K.
He would be in that scenario, but it sounds like Tajay is going to play. I mean, it hasn't really mattered from the workload standpoint for Pollard, but it does sound like he's going to play maybe a little bit less than 100%, but it's a good matchup. I think I lean Charbonnet at 6K if I was going to pick one of the 6K guys this week against Miami. He's looked honestly pretty terrible.
So bad, man. I'm
As a
going to give you
runner,
a stat here in a second.
It's been bad. But a running back that's going to play 95% of the snaps, which is what he did a week ago, at this price point, at home, favored, getting 5-ish targets, it's kind of hard to pass up. Now, in tournaments, that's a different conversation. You hope he fails and gives you a hollow, 16 carries for 45 yards, no touchdown stat line. And if you want to fade him in that scenario, I think that's totally fine. But for cash games, for how he projects, I think it's a good spot. We just saw what James Cook did to this Dolphins defense a week ago. So it's a pretty good matchup at home for Charbonnet, and he's a pretty good salary.
The only running back who has been worse in EPA per rush attempt is Zamir White. It's Zach Charbonnet, Zamir White. And what's crazy is, and I sent this to you, shout out to Football Insights, which is one of my favorite accounts to follow.
Great follow.
They charted EPA per rush attempt, and then what PFF does is as a perfect block rate. So like, how did the offensive line function? If you are in the bottom right, that means that the play was blocked very well, and you were so bad at it. And he's basically been the worst. So And J.K. Dobbins is like breaking the chart, by the way. So I think at the end of the day, Charbonnet is just so inefficient that it's hard for me to think about in tournaments. I get it at 6K. I did have to throw out Cam Akers, though. We have to mention it. He's at 4.7. You could call it a revenge game because he played on the Vikings, I guess, for a little bit.
Oh, he definitely has revenge in his heart. Hates the Vikings.
All the players do. All the players have so much revenge in their heart. So what are you doing if Mixon is out? Akers, 4.7. Dameon Pierce didn't play last week. Whenever it does suit up, he doesn't actually play that much anyways, and it doesn't really matter because he's not good.
Yeah, that's one way to say it. Yeah, Mixon did not practice.
Got to dunk on Pierce.
It's in your contract with the Ballers. Yeah, he did not practice today on Thursday as we're recording this. And then as well, Mixon missed Wednesday and Thursday dealing with that ankle injury. So it's trending as of our recording that it probably will be Cam Akers as the lone guy in the backfield maybe. And if he is the lead guy and he gets a projected workload of 15-ish touches at 4,700 for cash, that's really tough to pass on. Now, it's Cam Akers. You know, we've been down this road before. He is coming off a torn Achilles a year ago. He's actually looked pretty good, in my opinion, in the preseason. All that to say, it's really terrible matchups. Like Minnesota, even going back to last year, has been great against the run. They kind of got beat up by Mason last week, but in general, the efficiency stuff on the Vikings is very good against the run. So I wouldn't be surprised if he flops in this spot. But when you talk about what does he let you do with the rest of your roster, that's, again, pretty tough to pass on for cash games. So for now, keep Cam Akers in your pool. Obviously, it's a great offense with the Texans. But this will be you only consider him if both Mixon and Dameon Pierce are out.
Yeah, that game, I have some worries about that game because it's kind of in that second or third tier where usually I like to attack and find those games that are at the 45 to 49 range that are just below. And I just feel like it could turn into a dud. Like both those defenses, I think, are legit. I think the Texans are legit. They've had some easier opponents so far, but anyway, I'm just worried about that game turning into a dud. Charbonnet on FanDuel. I love the price there. I need to at least say that. He's 6K on DraftKings, 6.7 on FanDuel. That's fine there. Wide receiver has a bunch of dudes in the 6K range that are going to be popular. So Devontae Smith, who is awesome. In my notes, I just wrote Smith forever. All the time. Devontae Smith. 6.9. That was pricing before Monday night.
Yeah, obviously he's in our pool right now because A.J. Brown is probably not playing in this game. And if that's the case, Devontae Smith saw 10 targets last week, truly alpha usage, 34% target share. John Dotson can't earn a target to save his life. Dallas Goedert is out there for a good time. It's a pace-up spot against the Saints. Like, it's all there for Devontae Smith. So he looks awesome. And then if you just want to drop down a little further, it's Chris Olave week. I mean, one of Olave or Shaheed is going off 100% guaranteed this week is how I feel against this Eagles defense. Olave, in my model, tackled at the 1 yard line, Kyle. Those guys the next week are guaranteed to score a touchdown, okay? Put your house on it. Put your savings on it. Just kidding. But in all seriousness, we just haven't seen it pop yet for him. But with how the offense has been in this matchup, you would project eventually it's going to happen, and this looks like the spot to do it, especially if we think the Eagles can push back on the other side. So I love Chris Olave this week, 6,300 against the Eagles at home. Makes so much sense to me.
I love Chris Olave so much. I'm sharing with you right now, but I'm pretty sure that I've said the same phrase in all of our matchups in the main show. It's literally me saying, Olave, please be great. And over the span of like the last year or two, I've been saying the same thing. Guys, he was really good last week. He saw 38% of their targets. They didn't have to throw the ball. So I think this will be a matchup where it's a little bit closer, hopefully. Yeah, Chris Olave, I want to play so bad. 6,300 is so cheap. Ayuk at 6,200, I feel like he's going to get a ton of love this week. 6,500 on FanDuel feels like a lock. It really comes down to, are you going to play Mason, Ayuk, and Kittle? Where are you at right now?
Yeah, real quick on Ayuk. This is an unreal spot for him. Credit to Dwayne McFarland. He works with Fantasy Life. Put this out on Twitter. Over the last 3 years without Debo on the field, he's seen a 29% target share, 45% air yard share, and average 2.92 yards per route run. This Rams team is abysmal. They're dead last in yards per pass attempt allowed. So Ayuk just looks so strong. The tricky thing is, if you want to play Kittle, I get an uneasy feeling playing Mason, Ayuk, and Kittle. So we don't think the Niners are going to fail. Nothing says they should, but weird stuff happens in the NFL. And as we saw last
Lock of the week.
If you put all of your eggs in one basket, it's just you invite so much more variance. So I think I'm going to set a rule in my cash games that I'm probably only playing 2 of the 3. I have not figured out which ones those are. But when we look at tight end, oh my gosh, it's so bad, man. Like, Kittle stands out as an awesome play. Jake Ferguson looks okay, but he's coming off the MCL issue and the bone bruise. I'm not sure he's 100%. You could go to Colby Parkinson again, but I mean, are you excited about that? No, of course not. So I think Kittle to me just stands out because I love the other 6K guys too. Not that Ayuk is a bad play, but I think just at tight end, I feel so much more confident with Kittle in my lineup than I do with Colby Parkinson or something. So that's where I'm leaning. I don't have a strong take though, as of now, of where I'll finally get to, but both guys definitely need to be in consideration.
I loved playing Kittle last week because it was a Debo week. Everybody was playing Mason. And so the leverage was there. So I tried to play some Ayuk, I played some Debo, Purdy double stacks. So I think for tournaments, Kittle is an interesting fade because I had the same feeling. I looked at the tight end pool and I was like, God, I don't really like anybody. Bowers is fine, but he's only $300 cheaper. There are some plays, some leverage plays at tight end, like McBride and Laporta, that I love this week. So Kittle and cash, if you want to punt Parkinson, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I think the hardest point is just wide receiver. I can't tell you any values right now that I like. Like, I'm not playing Juwan Jennings.
Juwan Jennings guaranteed 4 for 75 and a touchdown after Kyle said that. That's what I was saying at the top of the show for cash, where it's like no one below 5K I'm even like excited about. Like, I wrote up in my article Deontay Johnson, but it doesn't give you any confidence. Like, there's just nobody in the 4Ks that you actually want this week. So that's why I'm leaning towards these more balanced builds and maybe spending down at quarterback, but we'll see. At wide receiver, if you drop down a little bit, like below the 6K range, I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba stands out to me at 5,400. Dude just saw 16 targets a week ago. We just talked about that spot at home against the Dolphins, so that's intriguing to me. I'll throw out Tank Dell as well. It's been rough to start the year as far as his counting stats. He's left 2 massive plays on the table as far as drops are concerned. If he catches those, we're talking about him in a completely different light. 5,200 against Minnesota. He still has a 14.4 yard ADOT. That's awesome. He's still seen at least a 16% target share. I wish it was higher, but he's a guy that you bet on for talent and big plays with CJ Stroud. And just for context, he's $200 more than Demarcus Robinson. I mean, Tank Dell's a superstar. Demarcus Robinson had like 4 good weeks last year in his entire NFL career. So I'm not showing up to a cash game with Demarcus Robinson. I'd rather play Tank Dell and just bet on the talent and CJ Stroud and hope for the best. So that's where I'm at with the cheap values this week. There's not a lot of them. So for me, I kind of cap it at like the 4,900 and above range, which puts you in a really tough spot.
Yeah, you're going to end up having 2 to 3 guys that you're like, and you're looking at your lineup, you're like, I have Devonta Smith, Tank Dell, Chris Olave. Sweet. Like, or Ayuk. Like, it's like, you feel good about those players, but you do have to pay down at least somewhere. So yeah, it is more of a balanced build week. The other guys that are cheap, I mentioned Jennings, Greg Dortch. It's just, I don't love paying 4,500 for these players. If they were 3,600, sure, it's fine. Like we did with Yoshi Voss, but we're not at that point right now. And defense, if Malik Willis plays, then I love Tennessee. If Jordan Love plays, then I think it's like they're fine. But I think the Bucs feel like the safest play at 3K.
Yeah, taking on Bo Nix. He has thrown 2 picks in each start so far. Has looked quite terrible. They have no weapons. The only team that is worse in EPA per play than the Broncos right now are the Panthers. So the Bucs,
and they're not even an NFL team.
Barely. Bucs at home, favored by a touchdown, makes so much sense.
All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Vitamin Water. So much of what the world is obsessed with starts out in New York City. It's a place full of style and character that has something for everyone. With a range of flavors to meet any kind of taste, it's no wonder Vitamin Water was born there. Colorful, flavorful, anything but boring. Vitamin Water injects a daily dose of vibrancy into a watered-down life. Grab a Vitamin Water today. Vitamin Water is a registered trademark of Glasso.
This episode is brought to you by Polestar. Time is luxury, which is why Polestar spent so much time designing the Polestar 3, their luxury electric performance SUV. It's designed to go further with up to 315 miles of range and immerse you in a unique listening experience powered by 25 speakers. Your favorite daily news podcast has never sounded better. All to make the time you spend behind the wheel of Polestar 3 the best time of your day. Book your test drive at Polestar.com.
As promised, I'm going to remind all of us that we have a section called Stack Attack and we have a drop.
Stack Attack.
I always try to use that phrase around my kids, Stack Attack, and they don't get it. They don't listen to the pod. My kids aren't really into what we do.
They don't really want to help the numbers?
No, not at all. They're not trying to boost us at all in the ratings. I will say this, because I was talking about my job, and we were trying to explain to Houston, like, hey, there's parts of school that you're not going to like. Hey, like our jobs, there's parts that, aren't always great, and just trying to give him that perspective. And he goes, Daddy, there is one part of your job I really like. I was like, oh, what's he going to say? He goes, I like all the colors on your spreadsheets. So, talking like a true Borg.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, he's just like you, man.
Conditionally formatting things, when that clicked in my mind years ago, it's like, wow, this makes sense.
That's gold.
I know. I feel like I'm parenting well. That's all. That's how I took it, is that I'm parenting okay.
Most dads with their sons, they they sit down on Sunday, they're like, here's our, watch this route. Look at this guy. What a catch. You're like, hey son, let me show you these. Let me show you this conditionally formatted spreadsheet. This is how you play football in the year 2024. Is on the computer.
Son, no. Don't watch the game. Don't that doesn't matter. Your eyes betray you, son. What you really need to do is to bury your head in these projections and hope that maybe, just maybe, we're going to win a milli. Okay?
Oh, that is incredible.
All right, first game we're going to talk about is the Detroit Lions, who are 1-1 at the Arizona Cardinals, who are also 1-1. Detroit is a 3-point road favorite. The over-under is at 52.5. There's some chatter in our Discord channel about the 50-point over-unders. We've only had 2 of those, and they both involve the Lions. Do you want to guess how those went, Betz, on the over-under?
I'll go under and under.
That is correct. Yes, we've only seen under for 50-point games, and dating back to 2022, if you blindly took the under on a game that was at 50 points at closing, it's like a 73% hit rate.
You know why? The too high safety is killing the NFL, man. We got to get rid of it.
You're right, Kuiper. Mel Kiper.
For those that aren't aware, there is an incredible segment this morning on ESPN's Get Up of Kuiper just saying that the too high safety look is killing the NFL. What happened in the game I used to love, and it should be outlawed. I think it was his direct quote. So that's why.
You know what? Maybe he's onto something. Maybe I should just pay attention and get my head out of the spreadsheets. No, I love that we do get to marry the two things together, projections, spreadsheets, and then, I feel like people understand that we're film bros too. We watch the games, we know what's going on.
For sure.
Not everything. We can't anticipate everything. But where do you want to start with this game? Because it's clearly the best game environment. I was sold a narrative that Jared Goff in home and dome games rocks, and this is a dome game, and yet he hasn't been good. So is there hope? What do I do? Is he bad at football now?
So let's start first by updating the folks. I just checked. I put the lines in our doc earlier this morning. It's actually down to 51.5. So this total has dropped a full point.
All the hammering the unders, the Discord people.
That's what it is. So the game total has dropped. Now, on that note, I think it's important to highlight how this game goes south, because we all think about every game as like, well, this is how it goes over. This is definitely how I want to play it. But Arizona is 28th in neutral pace. They are a top 10 team in neutral rush rate. This is a 3-point spread. So both teams, in theory, if the game stays close, are kind of going to do what they do, which for Arizona, they want to lean into running the football, hit you with some play action with Kyler. that sounds a lot like the Lions too, right? So if both run games are able to find success, I think this game fails for DFS. Now that said, on paper, both rush defenses are actually very, very good. Quietly, Arizona has been good against the run. I don't want to overreact too much to two games, but they took on the Rams last week without linemen and the whole situation. So their numbers are a little inflated, but we know the story with the Lions. They've been so good against the run going back to last year. They've just been dominant. So if the run games fail and these offenses are forced to throw, that's how it gets there. So I think you just have to ask yourself, like, how likely do you think it is that these teams can do what they want to do and run the football? And if you think they are going to fail at that, then the passing game looks really intriguing.
I had some strong takes earlier in the week about Kyler and pressure rates, which we'll get into. But I think the point you're bringing up is that, like, this isn't the same Arizona defense we saw last year. It was like, this is a turnstile. Just do whatever you want. Run the ball on them. It has been different. Last year, they just ran quarters, which is cover for like a third of the time, highest rate in the league. This year, they've switched it up, and they've been doing more man, which is something you and I have talked about a lot. It's like the NFL swings on a pendulum. You're seeing teams go to more man and help out in run coverage. So I think what this sets up well for me, looking at this game environment, is James Conner running the ball was someone we loved last week, and yet this week it's terrible. It's a terrible matchup against Detroit. And then the throws to the outside worked last week for Arizona. They didn't work in week 1 when there was pressure. And I think that's going to be the thing with Kyler is when he's under pressure, his ADOT just shrinks. Just to give you some numbers here, when he was under pressure last year, his ADOT was 42nd out of 43, and he tied some guy named Bryce Young for 27th in PFF's big-time throws. So think about those throws to Harrison last week. He just didn't do it. He just checked it down. So I think this game sets up well for Dortch and McBride to come through. And, Marv can still be Marv and be a dominant player, but I tend to lean more in that direction.
Yeah, I think that makes sense when you think about not just those stats and how you think the game might go, but also the leverage that McBride provides on Kittle, like you mentioned at the top of the show, with our cash game section. I mean, McBride, for the last couple of weeks, has been mega chalk on FanDuel. He's been decently popular on DraftKings, but this week, especially with everybody playing Kittle, I think McBride is really interesting in a potential high-scoring game. So, yeah, I think McBride is really interesting. On the Detroit side, like we talked about with the run game, like the Lions, I think, can run against anybody, but it does set up as a game where I think Goff's going to have some pretty big plays. Arizona's 24th in pressure rate. We know Goff has always been very pressure sensitive. So if they can't get after Goff and he can, pick apart the defense, this defense is allowing 7.3 YPA. It's the 4th most in the league. So they have been a pass funnel, at least on paper. And now you have Jameson Williams in the mix. You've got Amon-Ra St. Brown. You've got Laporta. So the weapons are there for Goff to have a big game that I'm actually interested in kind of shying away from the Lions' backs, which feels weird to say because I always want to play them every week because they're so good. But I find myself more into the Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams, and Laporta this week. What are your thoughts on the pass catchers?
It's so hard with Gibbs and Montgomery because I think you can say yes to both, but in a tournament, it's so hard to see them getting there. Like, we played them last year because you had those games where it's like, this is a Montgomery game. They're going to run the ball a ton. He's going to get in the end zone twice. He projects well. Or Montgomery's out. Play Gibbs. And I just have such a hard time buying into ceiling outcomes for either of those players. Like, Gibbs would be the one that I would clearly choose, but I looked this up. He's surpassed 20 DK points, which if you don't get 20 DK points at 6.8, that's not a great tournament play, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not. He's done it twice in his last 10 games. So I need a ceiling outcome. I need a back and forth affair. And as a receiver, he hasn't been as explosive as we want. And sometimes those are just like how the defenses are playing, but just these massive plays. Last week, it was like a lot of checkdowns, a lot of stuff late, and it just never amounted. So I think Gibbs and Montgomery, I probably won't play Montgomery. Gibbs, I think in tournaments makes sense, but I think it's Goff double stacks. He was awesome against cover 3 last year, like one of the best in the league, behind only Purdy in a couple of stats, and that's kind of what Arizona plays. So for me, it's Goff, and then figuring out if it's Amon-Ra and Laporta, Jameson Williams, Laporta, whatever the combination is, like that's my way of attacking this game.
Yeah, it makes sense. I definitely like Amon-Ra. Jameson Williams is also interesting. I like one of the stats I found from Next Gen Stats. Super interesting. They have this average separation per route metric, which looks at just how open are wide receivers getting against certain teams. Arizona is dead last in that metric allowed. They're also 31st in PFF coverage grade. So on paper, I think one of Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams, Laporta is a really good way to play this slate from a game theory and honestly just on paper standpoint as far as the matchup is concerned. So I'm more into the passing game than the running game on the Detroit side.
Yeah, it was great to see Amon-Ra bounce back. We kind of talked him up last week. It's like, this dude's going to go off. I do want to give some love to Laporta, though. 6K, he's not going to be popular, and you're kind of touchdown dependent, but keep in mind, he's ran more routes than any other tight end in football. He's only ran 15 routes inside the red zone, saw only one target so far. But against cover 3 last year, which I mentioned what Arizona does, he led this team in fantasy points per route run. So it was actually ahead of Amon-Ra because of all those touchdowns. So it wouldn't shock me to see him get in the end zone. And I think he's a great leverage play. But I mean, I'm not playing Laporta and McBride in the same lineup, but I feel like those two tight ends, one of those dudes could go off in this game.
Yep, I like that a lot.
All right, any other takes?
I don't think so.
All right, I will be taking the... Was it at 3.5 at one point?
No, I think it's been at 2.5 and then up to 3. So money coming in on Detroit.
I'm going to take Detroit in the points.
Taking the under. You just talked about it. 50-point total. You got to hammer the under. You got to.
Well, you know that's how podcasting works, is you give advice, but you never take your own advice.
Right, of course.
Yeah. No, you don't actually put money down on what you're saying, of course.
Imagine.
Next game, the Philadelphia Eagles, who are a football team that plays in the NFL. I mean, just getting trounced by the Atlanta Falcons by 1 point. It's like there would be completely different vibes right now. Instead of like us being like, man, I told you Kirk was the man, it'd be like, all right, we need Penix to come in. That's literally 1 point difference.
We were one Saquon catch away from Michael Penix taking the field.
And Kirk said, no, not today. I love Kirk.
Real quick on Kirk.
So,
I texted you this during the game. I don't know if anybody else noticed. There was a run by Bijan in the first half of that game. And Kirk faked like a zone read, like as if he was going to actually run. It was the funniest thing ever, but I love Kirk. I'm rooting for him.
He's trying to freeze the defense. Like, guys, what if I go up? What if I take off here?
Yeah.
Eagles at Saints. Saints are clearly the talk of the NFL right now. You can bring up any stat. They've gone from basically dead last in play action rate, pre-snap motion. They were 26 in fantasy points per dropback, yards per attempt, drive success. They were middle of the pack. They're number 1 in all of those. So the weird thing about this team is I was told, and I did the research too, so I'm one of those people that was telling people, I thought this was supposed to be the worst offensive line in the NFL. And
that's what play action does to you, dude.
I know, but also, like, did Micah Parsons play in that game last week? Because I don't remember.
I honestly don't know if I heard his name during the broadcast at all.
It's weird. And so the Saints, you could just press copy and paste and go, well, they're just going to be super efficient, super elite. I think we would say there's going to be some regression at some point, while also recognizing they've just blown people out. I mean, the game against Carolina, they went up 7 and then just never looked back. They were 6 plays in. Dallas, it took them 7 plays to get up 7 and just they were up by almost 20 at half. So I think Derek Carr double stacks make sense. It's just that you're not tricking anybody with it in this game. So where do you want to talk about the Saints?
Yeah, I don't know if there's any sneaky plays. Honestly, I don't know that I can get into anybody that's not Kamara, Olave, Shaheed, or of course Derek Carr. But if you're playing Carr, you're obviously stacking with those guys. So you're not going to sneak anybody by anybody else in this game on the Saints side. So to me, I think it's fine chalk. I think it's pretty good because of how good the matchup is. They've got a 26 team total. That's very healthy on this slate. So, and Philly, I think they can answer back. So you mentioned some of these games they've been in where they've just been blown out, or blowing teams out rather. If we get 4 quarters of the Saints offense and how good they've been instead of 2.5 or 3, then we could really see some huge games. So I think they're all good plays. They're all honestly in cash consideration. So you should expect them to be popular, but for good reason. Just know that if you play, Kamara and Olave and bring it back with Devonta Smith, so is everybody else sort of thing. So it's not bad or wrong to do. You just need to understand that you have to get different elsewhere in your lineup.
I'm having such a hard time thinking of how to get different. I mean, Saquon is probably going to be, of these pieces, the one that has the lowest roster percentage. Between Devonta Smith's going to be super popular, Kamara is going to be popular, Olave, people are going to want to play Shaheed. So it's like Saquon feels like the play if you wanted to gain leverage or, make him a wipeout pick and just say, I'm playing Saquon. I think this game goes under. All the roster percentage goes to everybody else. And I just think that Saquon just gets it because he has the most touches in the NFL. It's like he's a usage monster. So I don't know if I love stacking up this game. Because, let's say you wanted to do Hurts and Devonta Smith. Well, who are you playing on the other side? You're just running into a ton of chalk with Kamara or Olave or Shaheed. You're not getting different.
Right.
So I feel like there's more to gain from not fading this game, but just not going overweight.
Yeah, kind of similar. And it's obviously a very different situation than the Rams last week. The Rams last week, we talked about a potential tournament fade just because there's so much fragility in the offensive line and how poorly they could play. And if you play 3 of those guys, it could go really south. And we saw that. Not saying that will happen, but again, the NFL is weird, man. Stuff happens that you don't predict is going to happen. So if everybody's playing this game, it might be a decent idea in tournaments just from a game theory standpoint alone to say this game is good, but nobody goes crazy. And these are all useful pieces, but not GPP winners. That possibility definitely exists. And so that's a good way to think about it from a tournament perspective if you do want to gain leverage on the field.
Yeah, I feel like Carr is 5,800 is super tempting. I like the price. We know that he's been a 300-yard bonus guy in the past. He hasn't really been asked to do it on volume alone this year. So Carr is putting in the emotional part of this game. Carr is one of those players that when you don't expect it, he comes through. But then when you finally go all right, I'm playing this guy in my home league this week, he goes out for 10 points.
Yep.
Yeah. And yes, I'm starting him in a league. So, so give me your Vegas take.
Man, this is painful to say, but I'm going to take the Saints to cover 2.5.
I will too. We talked about it, how the line was Philly 2.5. Was that part AJ Brown news when that broke on Monday? I think that's part of it.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, but also just what everyone saw Monday, and now you have a rest disadvantage against the Saints.
Oh, you don't go to New Orleans tired, man, and expect to win.
I've done it before. It's been bad.
But play all the Devonta Smith you want. Do it. He's great. He's awesome. Let's take a quick break, and we'll highlight one more game.
Your teen requested a ride, but this time not from you. It's through their Uber teen account. You drive your teenager around, a lot, to their friend Jacob's house, their other friend Jake's house, to James's, to Jaden's, to Jalen's, to...
Mom? This is Jake's house, not Jacob's.
Now with an Uber teen account, your teen can request a ride under your supervision. They'll ride with a highly rated driver, and with live trip tracking, you'll follow along the whole ride to their friends' houses that all sound the same. Add your teen to your Uber account today. See app for details.
Bye, Mom.
Summer's here, and you can now get almost anything you need for your sunny days delivered with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Well, you can't get a well-groomed lawn delivered, but you can get a chicken parmesan delivered. A cabana? That's a no. But a banana? That's a yes. A nice tan? Sorry, nope. But a box fan? Happily, yes. A day of sunshine? No. A box of fine wines? Yes. Uber Eats can definitely get you that. Get almost anything delivered with Uber Eats. Order now. Alcohol in select markets. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details.
We are back, and it is Bal versus Dow. B-A-L at D-A-L. Ravens, Cowboys. I'm just going to say it. It's my favorite game of the week. It's my favorite game for DFS. Do you feel the same way?
I love it. I think it sets up so well for both sides. Let's start on the Cowboys side, okay? Someone on this show, I won't say who, called CeeDee Lamb a slate breaker. Okay? He gets the long touchdown. We're cooking in the first half. I even texted you. I was like, this is great. Because I played a Dak CD team with a Shaheed bring back, and I was cooking early. Of course, it's the don't ever take a screenshot in the first half situation. And I sent it to you, and I was like, if Dak gets this 300-yard bonus, he throws another touchdown, CD's obviously going to go nuts. Of course, Dallas just could not do anything. They rest their starters in the fourth quarter, halfway through the third. So it was over at that point. But I think we have a little flop lag situation here with CD. Now, he is on the injury report, so make sure you're monitoring that. But the Ravens' pass defense, man, has been abysmal. They're dead last in yards per game allowed through the air. They're 26th in coverage grade per PFF, 25th in EPA per attempt, 27th in pressure rate. And on top of all of that, Dallas's run game is broken. So you have a situation where Dak faces a pass funnel defense and they can't run the football. Dak should pass the ball a ton in this spot. So I love going right back to Dak stacks this week, especially with CD at 8,800. We talked about the builds for cash. They're going to be balanced. I think CD Lamb, again, falls through the cracks a little bit this week.
Yeah, and the best part about Dallas is they're playing fast. Their games always have been, that's how it was last year. And so far, third most plays per game, total plays per game, third most total points per game. So it sets up really well in a dome after getting embarrassed last week by the Saints. So Dak stacks makes sense against the Ravens. On the other side, King Henry is set up quite well against the Cowboys, who are dead last in EPA per rush attempts. So, man, it's like, I know what the Ravens want to do, and I know I want to play Henry. I bet he's going to get lost. He's not going to be in the cash game consideration because the other guys. So what do we do? When he's not popular, we play him in tournaments. So it's almost like, is it too easy to say we're going to stack up Dak and have Henry as the bring back and then just print money?
I hope so, because that's what I plan to do. Yeah, you think about the running back position. We talked about pricing and some of the best plays. Like, again, Kamara is expensive, but then you drop down a little bit. People are going to play Achane. Zach Charbonnet is right there at 6K. We talked a little bit about Tony Pollard. Jordan Mason's going to be the most popular play on the slate. So it's very quickly a situation where you can't play a lot of Henry, right? Like, it's going to get a situation where you lost in the shuffle. We haven't seen like an explosion game yet this year. He had a pretty good game last week, but in these close games, when the Ravens can get ahead, Henry will be featured. So if you think the Ravens can get control of this game, Henry's in an awesome spot, and I think you run it back with a Dak to CD spot, stack it up there. It makes too much sense to me.
Yeah, you can basically ignore Ezekiel Elliott and Rico Dowdle. Just not even on my radar. They don't exist. So CD looks great. Tolbert is at least making some noise here at 3,800 as a, if you need a third piece, I think I don't have a specific stance right now. Is it Cooks, Tolbert, or Fergalicious Fresh? So do you lean in towards Ferg Daddy?
I want to, but just in the back of my mind, like, I'm not sure how healthy he really is. So we'll see based off of Friday's report and how the weekend looks for Ferguson. If he's healthy, 4,500 for him is a really good tag as part of a Dak double. Tolbert is so cheap, 3,800. We saw a couple of splash plays in the first couple of games. So I think he'd be my preferred stack partner if we got news that Ferguson was not 100% or something. But you want to talk about a low rostered guy that you can just throw in and say, I'm betting on Dak, period. And if he hits, assume it's CD and somebody else. I think Tolbert's in play as a dart throw for large field tournaments.
On the Baltimore side, we mentioned Henry. It's a great matchup. The snaps, if you just were to only look at that, you go like, man, Justice Hill's out snapping this guy, and they paid all that money. Well, it's very clear distribution of how things are on certain downs, passing downs. That first game also screwed up a ton where they were just behind against the Chiefs. So I ignore Justice Hill for the most part. Henry gets the early down work. That's all we care about. So I like Henry a lot. Zay did have a little bit more nuance to his route tree last week where it was just screens. So I did like seeing that. He's been the first read, and I think he's a better play on FanDuel where he's 6,800. So I like him more there. I love Mark Andrews at 4,800. I'm ready to get hurt again. So I think in this game, like, the highest rostered player I'm trying to look at is like Lamb doesn't look very high. People aren't playing Andrews. I think people will want to play Lamar, but like I just don't see a ton of pieces in this game like just being crazy out of control.
Yeah, it's an awesome game. Like, you can play this game. You could play a Dak skinny with CD or whatever and play one of the Ravens, and then that's your leverage on the slate with these guys all being low rostered, at least projected right now. And you can mostly put some chalk around it and feel pretty good about you have really good plays, but also some differentiation in your lineup. This game just, for that reason, just makes so much sense to me because of how interesting the game sets up. It's a really good total. It's in a dome, yet not a lot of people are going to play it.
Yeah. Would you go Lamar with Andrews and then Lamb as a bring back?
I think that's one way to play it. Or Lamar to Zay. He's been playing very well, and he's getting a lot of volume too. So again, he's another reason that you play this game. The 6K range at wide receiver, he's not one of the guys that people are going to play. So again, just price point pivot. I think Zay makes a lot of sense.
Price point pivot. I love it. The line is fishy with the Ravens favored by 1.5 on the road. Why do you think, why is that?
Probably just what Dallas did last week where they just got embarrassed, I think.
You mean when the Ravens got embarrassed by losing at home to the Raiders?
Also true.
I would just take Dallas.
You like Dallas in this one?
I don't love the 1.5. It doesn't that doesn't really matter to me. Just take Dallas money line, but
I like the over in this spot.
Okay. Yeah. I don't mind that at all. At that 48.5. We've talked about that. Those hit at a higher rate. There's more room there. All right. Moving on.
Slate Breaker of the Week.
This week's Slate Breakers has a great sponsor. It is by the Indian dish Tikka Masala, which I had for lunch today.
Delicious.
Do you a fan?
Oh yeah, big time. We had it last week for dinner.
Wow. We're getting we Teak Bros, man. Who knew?
Who knew?
Man, I love some I've got a couple of local Indian spots that are just top notch. So some Tikka Masala earlier was great, which is different than an Italian dish like chicken marsala. One letter difference.
Not to get confused.
Yeah, as stupid as I was sitting there eating that today for lunch, tikka masala, and I was like, wow, one letter is all the difference between that and chicken marsala.
That's what you were thinking about?
That's what I was thinking about, eating lunch by myself. My slate breaker is who we just mentioned. It's CeeDee Lamb. I think he's going to get lost this week among the other values bets mentioned, all the 6K guys, the other game environments. In our optimizer right now, he's at 8%. I checked a couple other places. I'm like, maybe we're dumb. Maybe we're off. 5.5%, 7%. Like, I think he's going to come in under 10 because he's expensive, right? 8,800, you got to pay up. But we know that Baltimore's pass defense has been, well, not good. And I think most people just kind of, if they haven't watched the games, they just assume, oh, it's Baltimore. They have a great pass defense. But just to give you some numbers, they're allowing the most passing yards per game, and teams are throwing the ball at the second highest rate against them, 66%. So I will take an alpha against a team that's been annihilated. And so I plan on being overweight on Dak and CD at home, which is just a great combination. It was great for us last year.
Yeah, I love it. I'm going to also take one of the players we talked about in the games that we highlighted today. I love Amon-Ra this week. When you think about where he's at in terms of his usage and the box score production, I know last week was awesome from a PPR standpoint. This guy's getting in the end zone this week, okay? 25 targets through 2 games, has not found the end zone. I think it happens this week. And so I want to go right back to an Arizona defense that we talked about has been pretty good against the run. I think Goff can have some efficiency here. And that obviously, you're the favorite to do that if you're going to bet on Goff is going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown. So give me him against a defense that ranks 32nd in dropback success rate and 4th highest yards per attempt allowed. Amon-Ra St. Brown, slate breaker this week.
Yeah, we're telling you to pay up at wide receiver. And that in itself is going to get you different.
Yep.
Like that just game theory-wise. All right, moving on.
It's time for Borg vs. Betz, presented by DraftKings.
All right, we are on fire through 2 weeks. I'm 4-0. Betz is 3-1. DraftKings Pick6. If you don't have a sports book, guess what? You can play DraftKings Pick6. I will let you start us off because I endorse this one stronger than any of mine.
Yeah, I'm going to take Devonta Smith over or more than 5.5 catches. We played this last week in the DFS pass for our props, and he cashed with 7 catches. Just so much usage. 10 targets last week. This is a pace-up spot. With no A.J. Brown, he should be heavily involved. You go back to the wild card game last year when A.J. Brown had to sit, 8 catches in that game against Tampa. He also went over this in week 1, so he's 2 for 2 on this line with Devonta Smith. So give me the more 5.5 receptions.
I'm going to do something that is going to make some listeners sad. Really, really, really sad here. I'm going to bring up Cade Otton, one of my favorite players in the league. Nobody grinds harder. Nobody has better cardio in the league than Cade Otton with his taped up fingers, but I'm taking Cade Otton less than 25.5 receiving yards. Are you disappointed in me?
I am. I thought he was your guy.
Yeah, it's a weird podcast. I'm taking Cade Otton's less than, and Greg Dortch is somebody I actually like. But yes, he's a cardio machine. In 2 games, he's gone 1 for 5 and 0 for 0. He has not been involved. Betz, do you see his yards per route run so far?
I just saw it. This is so impressive. 0.09 yards per route run. He's almost breaking the model in terms of how inefficient he's been. That is so impressive.
I'm going to do a 6-6 study because I'm like, man, 57 routes run and you have 5 yards. Is that the worst that we've seen to start a season for a long time for a tight end? So he's gone over this line, 25.5 receiving yards in just 2 of his last 8 games. And teams are running the ball against Denver at the 3rd highest rate, 59%. Betz and I were talking before. It's like Rachaad White's a bit banged up. I think they're going to involve some Bucky Irving this week. And it's just not... I'm going to take less thans on a lot of tight ends, especially if it's going to be this high of a line. And I just feel so bad because he's Cade Oxen, man. He's a beast of burden. He's got the cardio. He's just not going to get there. So sorry.
That's sad. Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, though. Let's stick with another tight end. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm taking 2 mores this week. I usually take the less, but I'm going to take George Kittle more than 48.5 receiving yards. We talked about that game a little bit. I don't really understand the line. When you look at no Debo, no McCaffrey, the offense should flow in the passing game through Ayuk and Kittle, and the Rams just put one of their starting safeties on IR. Kittle's been over this line in 12 of his last 20 games with Purdy under center, and when you go back to 2022, in 6 games without Debo, he has averaged 84 receiving yards. So I think this line is like 10 yards off. So give me the over or the more on 48.5 receiving yards.
All right, I'm going to take a running back who is a road underdog by about a touchdown, and he has been maybe the most inefficient back in the NFL besides maybe Zach Charbonnet. It's Javonte Williams, and I'm going to give you 2 ones. I wanted to see which one you like better, Betz. Hit less on his rushing yards, which is at 45.5, or less than his rushing and receiving yards combined, 65.5. He's been inefficient. Last week in the passing game, he was 5 for 48, but they didn't get to work in Jaleel McLaughlin a ton. But this team has been playing from behind. Their offensive line is terrible. And you've kind of seen the way things have gone. It's like, all right, we're behind. All right, Bo Nix, win it for us. And it hasn't worked out so well. So do you have a lean on less than 45.5 rushing yards or less than 65.5 rushing and receiving yards?
I think I lean... That's tough. I think they're both good plays. I would probably take the rushing yards just because we've seen the running backs, not just this year, but historically, the usage has been there. The yardage has not been there, but the actual targets and volume have been there it was Jaleel in week 1. It was Javonte last week as far as the catches. So you could just you could lose this bet if you have one of those fluky, just broken tackles, catches a screen, takes it 20 yards. You could lose it that way. So I would just lean into the game script and probably go less than on the rushing yards.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a gross game. I think he's been inefficient. It's sad to see. So just to recap, Betz took Devontae Smith's more than 5.5 receptions. I took Cade Otton's less than 25.5 receiving yards. He took George Kittle's more than 48.5 receiving yards and Javonte Williams less than 45.5 rush. That was Borg versus Betz presented by DraftKings Pick6. Download the new DraftKings Pick6 app now and use code BALLERS. That's code BALLERS for new customers to play $5 and get $50 in Pick6 credits. Betz, tell everyone goodbye.
We found the key to the slate. Dak, CD, Derrick Henry, and fading Cade Otton. And then you'll just print money this week. So should be fun. Hopefully everybody has an awesome weekend in the DFS streets. Good luck to you when you win $1 million. Tag us in Discord. Good luck this weekend. We will see you next Tuesday.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Non-withdrawable Pick6 credits expire in 6 months. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.